Hello. Good morning, TEDx San Diego. Hey. So good to be here. You know, I grew up in the Bronx in a very tough neighborhood. My parents, they had always used drugs. I mean, my whole life they had been getting high. And it was commonplace in my household to walk and see my parents shooting up drugs in my kitchen. And growing up, even though they were very loving to us, my sister and I watched them use drugs so frequently that that was just the way that our lives went. That went on for so long, and you can't live like that forever. It catches up to you. Eventually, both my parents contracted HIV, and by the time that I was the age that most people are when they're planning their prom or applying to college, what happened in my life instead was that my mother was, without access to the medications they have now, she went from having HIV to full-blown AIDS. My father was living in a homeless shelter, and I found myself at 15 years old sleeping in New York City streets in the parks and subway stations. Many nights I would fall asleep with my backpack in my lap, and I would have my journal, my clothing. I had a picture of my mother when she was my age, and she was homeless in New York City when her family had fallen apart. Now, living this way, you know, I know I sound pretty different from other people because it's such an intense situation, but I actually think I was really just like everyone else. No matter what was in front of me, I had dreams that I wanted to accomplish. I mean, don't we all? You know, I had things like I wanted to go to school, I wanted to have a family, I wanted to live a better life. People would often ask me very strange questions about being homeless, and you know, that people would ask me, did you eat from the trash, or you know, where did you sleep, or you know, the things that people are interested in fascinate me, when instead what really was in my heart and was probably the most amazing experience I had was, again, this internal experience. I had these dreams, but living in that kind of despair, I let them begin to fade away. Have you ever felt hopeless in your life? Where you had something you wanted to do, but it felt so much out of your reach? I had this voice in the back of my head that I believe we all have. I call it the what if voice. And the what if voice said, what if you go to school? What if you change your life? What if you go back? And I let that voice fade in all of this sadness that I was in. And there's a quote that I love by Dr. Martin Luther King, and what he says is, your life begins to end the day you become silent about things that matter. Life can change. And I was inspired by this belief that my life could in fact change. And with that thinking in mind, I remember knocking on doors in high schools. I'd dust myself off after sleeping on the train. I'd knock on doors at high schools after years of being truant. And I would ask them to accept me. And I went from school to school to school, and I experienced a lot of rejections. But there was this feeling in my heart, a feeling that I want so badly to transfer to everyone that I meet now, which is that passion that I felt for that what would happen if I just kept going. Even if there was every evidence in the world that it wouldn't work out, what if? And for the idea that even though it was unlikely after being told no so many times, it was possible that the next school would accept me. And so I continued to knock on doors until I was accepted. And then I fell in love with what would be possible if I got straight A's for the first time in my life. So I did that. And then I fell in love with what would be possible if I applied to Harvard. And I fell in love with what would be impossible, well, with applying for a scholarship from the New York Times. And I had no idea how big this would get. I didn't know that I would actually be able to lift myself out of homelessness, go on to Harvard, graduate, and entirely change my life. People get pretty fixated and fascinated on the results. Talk to me about Harvard, or talk to me about the mechanics of how you did what you did. People think about that, and what I am moved by instead is falling in love with possibility in your life. Because haven't you ever felt in a place of despair? You had a goal, you had something you wanted to accomplish, and you start feeling that fading feeling. Absolutely no one knows what's possible until they're already doing it. And each and every moment is always another chance. No matter what your history is, no matter where you've come from, every moment is a new possibility. So anytime that you are hunkered down in that feeling of despair, anytime that you may ever doubt yourself or believe for a second that there was a before and after to your potential in this world, I'm standing here today to tell you that your potential is timeless. My wish for you is that you fall in love with possibility and you marvel in what it will create in your life and in this world. Thank you so much for having me here today.